Elisabeth Seaman of California will be our next speaker. Elisabeth was a 6-year-old Dutch girl who lost her father at Bergen-Belsen. She had the honor to meet George Gross before his passing. And 2 evenings ago, Elisabeth met Carol Walsh, Frank Towers, and the rest of the soldiers for the first time. She has brought with her letters that were written between her father and mother in that camp. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Elisabeth Seaman.
Hi, it's great to be here with you, and certainly with our liberators, who are these wonderful men who not only freed us, but gave us our lives, and therefore the lives of our families, and I have several of my family members here. I have a question of you students, well, anybody here, and I'd like you to raise your hands and keep them raised while I ask you these 3 questions. How many of you have ever been the victim of bullying? Anybody? Okay. How many of you know somebody who's been a victim of bullying? How many of you have been a bully? Well, and as you may know from the news, bullying in schools and among teens has even led to deaths. What we experienced in World War II was bullying on a grand scale, which led to millions of deaths. And we need to be able to get involved, stop this, change the behavior, or it continues as we know it is continuing now, whether with bullying among teens or persecution in Darfur or murdering, mangling, raping, all of these terrible things that go on in many parts of the world. My family was originally from Germany for many, many generations. Some moved to England. My parents moved to Holland. They thought that they would be safe there. They couldn't pursue their careers. Their businesses closed or were threatened to be closed. They were banned from many activities, so there was fear of being arrested and deported, and who knows where to and to what and when. So most feared for their lives. Even though we moved to Holland, my father's parents who lived with us were arrested during one night, and only after the war did we learn that they had been gassed immediately at the extermination camp Sobibor in Poland. In the spring of 1944, my parents were arrested by the Gestapo while on a business trip. Then I was called for and went with whoever, I don't remember who with, but spent the night in a cellar with strangers. I was 5 at the time and very much afraid, and these strangers tried to make me feel comfortable. And I guess it was the next day I was reunited with my parents in the Dutch transition camp Westerbork, from which all people went from Holland to other camps, and from there to Bergen-Belsen in April of 1944. Because I was young, and perhaps because I was not as observant as some of my co-survivors, or perhaps because my parents did everything they could to shelter me from the horrors of the camp, my memories are few. But I will share some of these with you. Sarah mentioned the appel, the roll calls, and she has a painting out in the lobby that commemorates that. And this is a bitter memory for me. As a small child, out in the cold, I had the feeling that the ice must be a foot deep or more. And if the count wasn't right, there was a recount and a recount. And as Sarah said, we might be there for hours in this very bitter cold with thin clothing. We were in what was called the Sternlager or the Sonderlager, where we were in possible exchange for German prisoners of war. And so supposedly there we had it better than those in other portions of Bergen-Belsen, but it wasn't very good anyway. And I have memories of seeing people in the section of the camp right next door to where our barracks was, where every morning we'd see piles of corpses and people in striped uniforms who were there as corpses. Pretty horrendous sight for a little kid. There were no restrooms in the barracks. There was a large, long latrine structure. What I recall was in a certain portion of the camp, and that's where we had to go outside, no matter what the weather, and just, plank with holes in it to sit on. We had this thin soup that's been described by others too, and the thing that I remember there was turnips. Many years, I wouldn't eat any turnips after the war for, longest time. One time, by the time my kids were fairly grown up, I thought, this is ridiculous. I've got to get over this. And I bought some turnips, and I started to cook them. And I learned that smell is apparently one of the most primal senses we have. And in cooking these turnips, the smell came back, and it just flooded a sense in me. I can't tell you really what, but I just couldn't eat those, and I never tried that experiment again.